Hello, Kevin Nemacki here, and today I want to talk to you guys about project briefs for your strategy and innovation projects. Why are project briefs important? The first thing we should probably talk about is why have project briefs at all? Why are these even important when it comes to your strategy and innovation projects? Well, there's a few things that project briefs will help you solve for, whether you're using them internally or externally, because they can really be used for either. You can use these internally if there's a project you're creating a team around to tackle with working team that you have inside your company. You can also use a project brief if you're engaging an external vendor, an agency, a consultancy, brand strategy company, anything like that. You're going to want to have a project brief or have a briefing with them and align on what you really need to make sure you get what you want out of the work. It's going to help us do a couple of key things when we do those briefings. One is it establishes clarity. So we need clarity at the beginning of a project around things like what we're trying to achieve and what's okay or not okay to do in getting to that place. You need clarity on what you're going to be solving for, really. And if you don't have that clarity, you can run into a lot of issues. The other thing a brief is going to help us with is alignment. So you need to be aligning with key stakeholders, with cross-functional partners, and a brief helps you do that. It establishes a process and the expectation that there's going to be a process that you will go through, and that allows alignment among your team, alignment with agency or partners, and alignment with anyone who has a key input into what needs to happen with the project. So those are some key reasons you want to create a project brief at the beginning of any strategy or innovation project, whether it's internally or externally. Some things that's going to help you avoid: inefficiencies. So I've seen numerous projects, you've probably seen projects yourself, that are inefficient. Maybe to solve a certain question or to answer a certain challenge in the strategy and innovation space. A project takes honestly too long or longer than it needs to take. Maybe it has more steps than it really needs to have. Maybe it has the wrong steps. Maybe those steps cost more or more resource consuming steps than what would really be needed to ideally solve a project. So we want to try to avoid inefficiencies. That's one reason we're going to do this. Another is the issues. So what is the issue that we're solving for from a business perspective? And if we aren't clear on that up front, we're going to end up potentially solving for the wrong issues or assuming we know what issue we're solving for when really that's misaligned. That's not what we really need to get out of it. So we want to make sure we solve for the right issues so it's more efficient, more effective. We don't end up with rework or having to do project steps again. And then we talked a little bit about alignment already. It's going to help us avoid misalignment. We don't want misalignment between key stakeholders at all. So I've already talked a little bit about alignment. So we want to avoid misalignment between key stakeholders, misalignment about what everyone expects to be achieved during the project and how that process is going to go. So these are the things we're avoiding. We're going to go from sad team to happy team at the end of this. And just having a process that starts with a brief is going to help everyone have common expectations, and it's more likely you're going to have everyone happy at the end of a project. So with all of that in mind, here's what I recommend as a project brief, or the key components that should be in a project brief. Now, your brief could have maybe a little bit more or some slightly different things in it, but I think there are some key elements that every good project brief for strategy and innovation needs to have. And if you don't have some of these things, you might run into some trouble. So we'll hit on some of the key ones. So background and key issue. One of the things I see in creative briefs, which also applies to project briefs, is a little too much background. So you do need some background in here, and you want some context for why the project exists and why the team needs to go about embarking upon this journey. But you don't want the background to be overly long and contain tons of unnecessary information. So typically this is going to be a paragraph or two. It's going to be relatively brief and just give some surrounding context. But the most important piece when you write this section is the key issue. It has to contain a key issue, and that's an issue from the business's perspective. So why does this project exist? Why should this project exist? Why is this project needed by the business, and what is that key issue that we're solving for by embarking upon this project? So you want to keep in mind here, it's not a consumer issue. So you're going to get into the project work and you might identify consumer issues to solve for, But in terms of the project itself, this section you want to identify for the business, what is the business issue that this innovation or strategy project is going to solve. So the next one we're going to look at is project objective. Project objective is, put very simply, what do we want to say we've accomplished once this project is complete? And we want to be very singular and focused about that. It's not a laundry list of a million things, right? It's going to be a single statement that answers that question. What do we want to have achieved when the project is complete? Another way to look at it that you might hear is, what does success look like? If we do this project successfully, if we meet the key issue head on, address that issue and solve it, what does that success specifically look like? We need to be very specific in success so that when we get to the end of the project, if we know if we've gotten there or not. We need to be very specific about what success looks like so that when you get to the end of the project, we know we've gotten to the right place. All right, so required timing is relatively straightforward. By when does the key issue need to be solved? By when will we need to have achieved whatever we've set out to accomplish? Very, very straightforward, but you do want timing in there. And I see a lot of project briefs that don't have timing requirements. So we do need to know how fast we need to have something done by, because it will influence potentially the project plan that we make. If I need to know the answer to an innovation challenge in a month, the way of getting there might look very different than if I had 6 months or 9 months to answer that question. So for critical questions to answer, what we want to think about are, what are the sub-questions underneath of the core challenge or core business issue, this objective that we've set out? What are the sub-questions that we need to know the answers to in order to address the bigger challenge or objective? So if you think it through, usually you can break it down into sub-questions. So I'll give you a quick example. If your core challenge was to establish a 5-year line extension pipeline for a category that you compete in, then you might have some critical questions to answer underneath of that, or some sub-questions if you were to break it down. Things like, what are the consumer needs or occasions that maybe aren't being met by products today? You might have questions like, what are some of the ideas we could generate that might solve for some of those need states? You might have a question that says, well, if we have some ideas, how do we know which of these ideas should be prioritized over others? Those sub-questions would help inform a project plan that you would make to answer the core challenge. Next on our list, we have deliverables. And this may seem obvious to some people because, hey, we've got a project objective that answers a key issue, so it should be kind of, I guess, easy to see what the deliverables are, but I think it always helps to have a section where we spell it out. These are the actual specific things that need to be handed in at the end of a project that we need to be able to walk away with. Whether they're physical or digital, something's going to get handed in that informs the answers to these questions. So it could be something like white paper, new product concepts, engineering drawings or designs. It could be a strategic recommendation document outlining which geographic market to enter next. Whatever those things are that need to be handed in, we want to put those under deliverables. You may also want to consider key deliverables along the way in the project. So maybe there is a key deliverable at the end, but maybe there's also a few milestones leading up to that where you might have a key deliverable you want to hand in along the way for key stakeholders or to kind of capture things and bring the team along. All right, now we're at Guardrails. Guardrails is relatively straightforward. You basically want to outline what is in versus out of scope. Now, not every project has guardrails. There may be projects where this is left open and no guardrails are provided. I think it's helpful, and I definitely recommend to try to at least capture guardrails every single time you initiate a project. Now, if the team has not discussed guardrails, you should prompt and begin that discussion with the team. You could also use this section to document assumptions you have about the project you're leading. These are the things that I assume you mean are in of scope, and these are things I assume you mean are out of scope, and just write them down on paper so that all the assumptions are there. And then when you share that back to the team, they can confirm, they can nod their head to it, or they could point out something that maybe needs to be discussed. Next on our list is available documents and resources. So this one is often overlooked, but available documents and resources are really meant to uncover historical information and input to your project that would maybe save you time, give you a head start, give you good direction, or onboard the team onto the project. So we're looking for those historical pieces. It could be prior research. Let's say you have an innovation project where you want to enter a new category, and maybe there's been prior research done 2 or 3 years prior around that idea, and if it makes sense for the brand to go there. Well, you want to bring that out in this section and identify it to make sure the team has it, that you pull it off the server or out of a folder or whatever it is, and you kind of share it out and download that to inform the project. All right, next we have recommended project plan. I think you always need a recommended project plan for your innovation projects. Now the trick is when you're writing a project brief, you may not have the plan yet. And so if you're writing this brief and using the brief as a way to gather information and align everyone in order to inform a project plan that you're going to develop for the project, then you can leave this section out initially and consider it optional. If you have the information you need and you're really using the brief to capture everything you've heard as a way to set up your recommended project plan, and you know what that plan is, then you're going to include it here as part of the brief. So it's a singular document. So you can really do it either way. It depends at what point and how you're using this brief. If it's prior to developing your project plan and informing it, or if it's to help set up and present what your recommended project plan is. And then the last one on our list is going to be budget and resources required. Now there's 2 ways to use this. Although it seems very straightforward, well, let's just find what our dollar figure is and throw it in there. But it really depends at what point you're at and if you're working internally and externally. So you may have a project where the team's kind of setting direction and we want to go and do this strategy and innovation project, and we know how much we have to spend to make it happen. Our budget is X. It could be $5,000, could be $500,000, whatever your budget is. You're going to put that in here and say, here's what we have available to complete this project and to answer the core question in the amount of time that we've suggested. Now, you also may have a situation where you maybe don't have a given budget, and what you're doing is you're recommending, based on this project plan, these are the resources or budget that's going to be required to complete the plan in this way and to really answer the question. So if you're coming back and using it that way, then you can consider it a question of resources required, and you would simply outline that. So what funds may be required from a research standpoint? Maybe you will need to do some consumer research or some market research. Do you need to buy data, third-party data, and get access to data? There's a cost to that potentially. Do you need to do R&D testing, research and development? Something like that would need to be included. And so you're going to identify all those resources. It could be hiring. You might need to hire a part-time or a full-time employee in order to work on this project. And so that FTE needs to go in as a resource required. So those are all of the things you're going to think about when you're filling this out. So those are the key, most important sections that should be in a project brief if you're doing a strategy project or an innovation project. So whether you're doing a high-level corporate project about the portfolio of brands, about markets maybe the company wants to get into, or if you're doing innovation projects that are drilling down into specific categories, specific brands or products, for any of those things, this project brief format fits all of them and works very well to align the team, get everyone on the same page, and set a good starting point for the work that you're about to do. Makes your work more efficient, makes your work more effective. So go out there and get it done. If you found this video helpful, go ahead and hit the like button. And if you would like to see more videos like this in the future, go ahead and hit the subscribe button, and that way we'll show up in your feed. If you'd like to be notified when new videos like this are published, go ahead and hit the bell, and you'll be notified whenever we post a new video. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.